So moving into relationships, and I guess this is also where self-esteem becomes really important. When it comes to relationships and the work that I've done with young people, thankfully it does seem to be changing, which is really positive. But about 2 to 3 years ago, whenever we did a group session with young people and we asked about healthy relationships, there was a real status around young people being in a relationship. So by that I mean young people thought it was cool to be in a relationship, and they tended to find themselves in relationships that us as adults would not consider healthy relationships. And the young people were staying in these relationships for a few reasons. So the first was that they're in a stage of youth, experimentation, they're quite new to this, and they don't necessarily have lots of role modelling around what a healthy relationship looks like. So for some of them, it was just not being able to identify that the relationship was unhealthy and that there was unhealthy aspects to that. The other part was the young women in particular, but also some of the young men, not having the self-esteem or confidence to leave the relationship. So for them to say to themselves, I would be a better person if I wasn't in this relationship right now. It was really difficult for young people to identify that or to actually act upon that and take themselves away. In hindsight, when a lot of them look back at the relationships that they were having, they were able to see, there was lots of unhealthy characteristics about that relationship. But at the time for them, being in a relationship and being seen to be cool and part of the it crowd was more important than how they were personally feeling. So I'm very happy to say that in conversations that we've had, particularly with young women, but also with young men more recently, that seems to be changing. There seems to be less of a status around being in a relationship, and I think people are realising, I don't have to be in a relationship to be cool. It's probably cooler to be independent and single than it is to be in an unhealthy relationship. The key thing when we talk about relationships as well, and especially with young people, when we talk relationships, they automatically tend to think sexual relationships or having a partner, having a boyfriend or having a girlfriend. We really reiterate with them that you have relationships with lots of people in your life. It's not just what we would term those romantic relationships. Potentially they're sexual relationships or they are relationships with a boyfriend or girlfriend, those romantic relationships. But there's relationships that you have with your family. There's relationships that you have with your friends. Potentially, if that young person is in employment, there's relationships that you have with peers and colleagues in the work environment or the school environment as well. So we really get young people to think quite broadly about what a relationship is and what it might look like, because there's different elements to relationships and how you may act with people in those. But the core of healthy and unhealthy is the same regardless of the type of relationship, so we generally term them to be healthy or unhealthy. And I think it's really important for us to recognise also that relationships will mean different things to different people and potentially at different times. For me, when I think about relationships, I'm thinking about those connections. Why do I have connections with certain people? Why am I placing value on that connection? And why am I working really hard for those connections to be maintained? I guess when it comes to talking about healthy and unhealthy, because a lot of people will sort of say to us, well, what does a healthy relationship look like? What does an unhealthy relationship look like? And I spoke about people being able to reflect in hindsight and look back on certain things and go, maybe that wasn't so healthy. If you hear the term healthy relationship, what kind of words are popping to your mind? What does a healthy relationship look like? What do we consider? Happy? Yeah. Reciprocal, absolutely. Respect, definitely. Respect is one of the biggest ones in a relationship. We also do a lot of talking to young people about that exact notion of respect. Like, do you get somebody's respect overnight? Not generally. It takes a long time to get that respect. And again, that's that development of trust as well. That trust and respect usually come hand in hand. How easy is it to lose somebody's respect though? It's extremely easy. One slip up and that respect can be gone. That relationship will never be the same again, regardless of how hard you work on forming that relationship back. That relationship may continue, but it will never be the same again. So trust and respect is really important.
You may not get respect straight away, but I think you've got to give it straight away.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I think that will become really important when we talk about consent too, that notion of respect. And that's not just respect for other people, but it's also respect for yourself. Yeah. So it's about having good communication, being respectful, being able to laugh, have fun together, and potentially leading to love. That's what ultimately people are looking for in those connections and those relationships. That sense of belonging, that sense of need, and that sense of love. On the flip side though, unhealthy. What are we seeing if we think about unhealthy relationships, or some of the words that are coming to mind if we think unhealthy? Fear, yeah. Control, jealousy, yeah. Abuse. And we talk about abuse, and a lot of young people automatically just think of physical abuse, but there's many types of abuse. You've got your emotional abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. So it's quite extensive a term. But it really is those sort of controlling behaviours, or the jealousy that shines through, which, you know, it's sometimes in relationships people see that as a good thing, like they love me so much that they don't want me to have connections with other people. But in doing that, the young person will eventually realise, oh no, I was cut off from really important connections that I had before that relationship, that romantic relationship in particular, had occurred. So is it pretty evident as to why self-esteem and healthy relationships are really important when it comes to sexual health? The more positive a self-esteem a young person has, the more likely they are to be in what we would consider a healthy relationship. And that if a young person was in a healthy relationship, they're going to be more able to express themselves, to share their values and have those values respected, which is really important for us to understand as we now move into how we're negotiating these conversations. This training is very much aimed towards you as a parent, carer or primary person in a young person's life, having the conversation with them. The young person then having a conversation with their sexual or romantic partner is a whole nother conversation to be had. But it's really important that we understand what's happening for young people, I think, before we can have that conversation with them in a meaningful way.